Chapter 1. The man in the worn shirt Friday began golden, with the first rays of sunlight reflecting off the gleaming storefronts downtown. It was a day of heavy foot traffic, and the restaurant Le Verre d'Or was already filled with sophisticated aromas even before noon. Inside the main dining room, every detail had been carefully thought out: starched tablecloths, impeccable crystal glasses, plates adorned with edible floral arrangements. The background music was soft, discreet, almost, as if it asked for silence so as not to interrupt the taste of luxury. Regular customers began to fill the tables. Women with expensive handbags, men wearing imported watches. The sound of clinking glasses mingled with the restrained murmur of conversations about business, travel, and investments. Then the door opened, and a barely noticeable silence settled over the room. The man who walked in seemed to have come from another world. A light blue shirt, wrinkled and slightly faded, simple jeans with no brand, worn-out sneakers with a torn toe. His hair was a bit messy. He hadn't shaved, no phone in hand, no watch on his wrist. He carried only a brown envelope, neatly folded, pressed to his chest as if it were far too valuable to let go. The maître, Odi Gustavo, noticed him immediately and frowned as if sensing trouble. "Good afternoon, sir," he said with a forced smile, stepping forward. The man nodded politely. "Good afternoon. I'd like a table for one, please." Gustavo hesitated, glancing quickly at the available tables. The best ones were empty, but not for him. "I'm sorry, sir, but do you have a reservation?" "No, but I saw there are open tables." "Yes, but they're reserved for regular guests. We have a special event today, maybe another time." The man didn't respond right away. He simply looked around. All eyes were on him. Some discreet, others openly curious. In the corner of the room, two young women giggled softly, taking pictures of their food and whispering to each other. One of them subtly lifted her phone and snapped a quick photo of the intruder. Further down, a couple paused their conversation to examine the strange newcomer, frowning as if he were contaminating the air. The man took a deep breath, calmly, without anger, without hurry. "Very well," he said with a faint smile. "Maybe another time." He turned to leave, but something fell from his shirt pocket as he walked toward the door, a brown envelope, the same one he had held so carefully. He didn't notice it had fallen, and no one moved to help except one. Bruno, the youngest waiter on the team. Sharp eyes, restless soul. He came from the outskirts of the city. He knew all too well the look of judgment. He'd felt it on his skin more times than he could count. Bruno quietly picked up the envelope before someone could step on it. He was about to go after the man, but paused. Curiosity got the better of him. He sensed something different. That man wasn't what he appeared to be. Behind the bar's curtain, Bruno slowly opened the envelope. Inside, there was a letter and a check. As he read, his eyes widened. What Bruno discovered in that envelope could change everything, but for now, he stood there, frozen, not knowing whether to run after the man or to let the world go on judging a book by its wrong cover. Bruno remained still, the envelope clutched in his hands. The paper was warm, as if it had... "To the management of Santa Clara Hospital," the letter began, and just below, a line stood out even more than the value. "This donation must remain completely anonymous. I visited the city today and would like to see the new wing before confirming the transfer." The signature, Enrique Duarte. Bruno felt a chill down his spine. He had heard that name somewhere. He discreetly pulled out his phone and typed, "Enrique Duarte Hospital Donation." The screen loaded, and within seconds a series of headlines appeared. "Mysterious billionaire donates 5 million reais to hospitals during pandemic." The enigmatic Enrique Duarte, founder of life-saving startup, he appears unannounced and changes the reality of struggling institutions. Bruno nearly dropped the envelope. The man in the wrinkled shirt with the calm eyes was him? He looked toward the door. Enrique had already disappeared into the crowd outside. Bruno looked around. The maitre d' was still laughing with important guests, performing like an actor on stage. The other waiters were busy, unaware of anything that had just happened, but something inside Bruno was burning, a kind of indignation that comes from deep within, where the trauma. Chapter 2. The taste of humiliation. The atmosphere at Le Verre d'Or had changed. It was no longer the elegant sound of casual conversation. It had become a curious silence, broken only by uncomfortable whispers. Gustavo tried to hide his nervousness. He spoke too loudly to customers, smiled more than necessary. But Henrique's absence had left a shadow hanging over the dining room. And now Bruno was observing everything through different eyes. For 2 years, he had served tables at that restaurant. He had been discreet, punctual, polite, but invisible. He was never invited to strategy meetings, never considered for a promotion. He was the tray boy until that day, until that envelope. Now, the paper was tucked inside the inner pocket of his shirt, like a spark, ready to ignite an explosion. He looked at every face in the room through a new lens. The laughter of the clients who had mocked the stranger. The looks of disdain aimed at the man in the simple shirt. Bruno remembered every detail, and he felt something he couldn't quite name. A mixture of anger, shame, and an urgent desire for justice. At the center table sat the Cardoso couple. Long time. Customers, millionaires, used to being pampered. Mr. Cardoso always summoned Bruno with a snap of his fingers. He had always done that. Today, he snapped again. Bruno approached. "Bring the house wine. The best," the man said without even looking at him. "And take care of that stain on the tablecloth. It's awful." Bruno glanced at the small drop of wine on the table. He could clean it, he could smile. But not today. Today he held a story in his hands, and for the first time he decided to speak. "Do you remember the man who came in earlier?" The couple exchanged glances. "The beggar?" Bruno held his breath to keep from reacting to the word. He wasn't a beggar. His name is Enrique Duarte, one of the country's top philanthropists. He was here, and he was turned away because of how he looked. Silence fell. Mr. Cardoso furrowed his brow, unconvinced. "You must be joking," his wife murmured. "Enrique Duarte, the one from the news?" Bruno simply nodded, and he added, "All he wanted was to eat here quietly before donating $1 million to the city hospital." The woman brought a hand to her mouth. Mr. Cardoso lowered his gaze. For the first time in all his years dining at that restaurant, He had nothing to say. Bruno walked away from the table without waiting for a reply. Farther ahead, other customers were whispering. The news was spreading, even though he hadn't said another word. It was as if the air itself carried the secret. As if the restaurant's walls were screaming a truth no one wanted to hear. Everyone saw the man, but no one truly looked. In the kitchen, Chef Jean was furious. "What did you do, Bruno?" Bruno turned to face him. "I told the truth." "The truth? You just ruined this restaurant's reputation. That could have been a bluff. How do you even know the check is real?" Bruno pulled out a copy of the letter. He had made it secretly. In the office, he handed it to the chef. Jean read it. His hands trembled. This is real." Bruno nodded. "It is," and he trusted silence. He wanted to be treated like an equal, but he was humiliated. Jean sat down. The spoon fell from his hand. My God! For the first time, one of Bruno's superiors had no response. Deep down, Jean knew something needed to change, and it would start right there. The news spread through the dining room like spilled wine. Silent at first, then unstoppable. At every table, someone had their phone in hand, searching, whispering, confirming. Enrique Duarte was really here. Did you see what he was wearing? My God, they kicked him out. Bruno held his ground, serving dishes as he listened to every sharp comment, every whisper filled with shared guilt. The restaurant, once a symbol of sophistication, now felt like a stage for judgment. But not of Enrique, of everyone else. At the front desk, Gustavo was sweating, trying to keep his composure, though his voice trembled whenever someone asked about the billionaire incident. He deflected with lines like, "It was a misunderstanding. We didn't recognize him." He preferred to stay discreet, but the truth had already taken shape, and it had a name, Bruno. Not because he exposed someone, because he had the courage not to stay silent. That night, the restaurant's social media profile was tagged dozens of times, photos of Bruno serving. Captions like, "The waiter who saw what no one else did," "The anonymous hero of Le Verre d'Or." And among those posts, one appeared like a bombshell. It was from Enrique Duarte himself. For the first time in months, he posted something personal. "Today, I was turned away from a restaurant for dressing simply. I don't blame the staff, but I deeply thank the only one who treated me with dignity. His name is Bruno, and he restored my faith in people." The post went viral. Thousands of likes, emotional comments, people saying they had gone through something similar, others vowing never to judge someone by their appearance again. The restaurant's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Newspapers, blogs, TV shows, they all wanted to talk to the waiter, the man who didn't look away. That night, Bruno was called into the office. Jean was there, so was Gustavo. The air was tense. Gustavo spoke first, as if trying to reclaim some lost dignity. "We're going through a delicate situation. You expose something that should have been contained." Bruno didn't blink. I didn't expose it. I responded to what everyone pretends not to see. Jean, seated beside them, seemed different. Bruno, he began in a calmer tone, you have no idea what you've stirred up, and honestly I think it was necessary. Gustavo turned to him, surprised. You're supporting this? Jean looked him straight in the eye. I'm supporting the truth. For years, we've acted like this restaurant represents elegance, but we confused elegance with exclusion, sophistication with arrogance. That needs to change. Bruno looked at Jean with surprise. For the first time, someone inside that place was saying what he had always felt. Jean continued, and you, Bruno, you have something rare, sensitivity and courage. Those can't be taught. There was silence. Gustavo looked unsettled. Bruno just nodded, grateful. But something still bothered him. It wasn't just about him. It was about everyone who had been overlooked like Enrique. About all the times people walked in and were mistreated for not looking like they fit the place. Before he left the room, he spoke, I know what it feels like to be invisible. Are you going to use that against us? Gustavo asked, struggling to stay composed. Bruno smiled, calm, steady. No, I'm going to use it to improve what you call an experience, because real luxury is empathy. And he walked out, leaving behind a heavy silence. On the sidewalk outside, a young woman waited with her phone in hand. Are you Bruno? He nodded, surprised. I'm a journalist. I work for the Human Stories portal. Can we talk? Bruno hesitated. I didn't do anything special. She smiled. That's exactly why your voice needs to be heard. He looked up at the sky. The city lights blended with the stars, but there was something different now. A new kind of glow. Bruno was no longer invisible, and what he had sparked was just beginning. Chapter 3. The Weight of a Name. The next morning, Bruno arrived at the restaurant before anyone else. The sun hadn't yet touched the sidewalk, but something inside him pushed him to keep walking. When he opened the back door, he found a brown envelope sitting on the locker room counter. No sender, no address, just his name, handwritten in bold, steady letters. Bruno. He opened it carefully. Inside there was a letterhead and an invitation. We would like to invite you for breakfast at the Duarte Foundation headquarters. Your gesture yesterday had more impact than you realize. Enrique Duarte. Bruno's hands trembled. The Duarte Foundation was known nationwide, educating underprivileged youth, funding medical research, building bridges where the system built only walls. Bruno stood still for a long moment. He remembered his mother sewing late into the night, his father who passed before seeing his son graduate, the times he pretended not to hear classmates make fun of his worn-out sneakers. And now, here he was, invited by one of the most influential men in the country, because of a simple gesture, a human one. When he arrived at the foundation, he was greeted with respect. No extravagance, no luxury, just people smiling, and then Enrique appeared, different from the man in simple clothes at the restaurant, but with the same eyes. Bruno, I thought you wouldn't come, he said, extending his hand. Bruno shook. It's still unsure. I'm not sure I deserve all this. Enrique smiled, and I wasn't sure if I deserved a second chance at that restaurant. But you gave it to me. They sat down. Enrique got straight to the point. I want to make you an offer. I'm launching a new project to shape leaders in places no one is looking. I want you to be part of it. Bruno frowned. Me? A leader? Exactly. You had the courage to confront the silent logic of exclusion. That's rare. Bruno hesitated. He was used to accepting less, but something inside told him, don't run this time. He accepted. And Chapter 4. When everyone sees, it was supposed to be just another ordinary morning at Le Verre d'Or. But that Tuesday, cameras arrived before the customers. Reporters crowded the sidewalk, aiming microphones at any staff who stepped outside. Bruno arrived by subway, as always, simple shirt, old backpack. But now everyone knew who he was, and for the first time, the looks he received were not of dismissal. They were of respect, admiration for the man who didn't back down from injustice. Inside the restaurant, Gustavo paced anxiously. "This is getting out of control," he whispered to Jean. "We need to take the spotlight off him." Jean didn't flinch. "No, Gustavo, we need to learn from him." In the kitchen, the staff stopped pretending they didn't. And no, they began to listen to Bruno, to respect him, even to ask him for advice. "What you did was beautiful," said Camilla, a long-time kitchen worker. "You spoke for all of us." That afternoon, the Duarte Foundation made a public announcement. At a press conference, Bruno's face appeared on the big screen. Henrique stood beside him, saying, "We need leaders who see beyond appearances." Bruno didn't just see, he acted. That's why, starting today, he is the new director of our Human Bridges program. Social media exploded. Thousands of young people saw themselves in his story. People shared their own experiences of invisibility, prejudice, and quiet strength. Bruno's name became a symbol, not of fame, but of humanity. The next day, when he returned to the restaurant to say goodbye, he found an envelope. It was from June. Inside, a note: "You've taught us more in a week than expensive training ever could. Come back any time. Now, we know how to truly see." Bruno took a deep breath. This wasn't an end. It was the beginning of a new world, where appearance doesn't define worth, and empathy becomes the new measure of greatness. Chapter 5. The Table That Never Grows. Cold months passed. The Duarte Foundation now had a new floor. There, young people from all walks of life studied, shared ideas, created projects. At the center of it all, Bruno, linen shirt, calm gaze, the same simple way. But now, when he walked into a room, people listened. They respected him. He inspired them. One morning, he received an unexpected invitation. It was from Jean. A new restaurant was opening. Smaller, more accessible. Its name, Commum, common, and its motto, painted on the entrance wall, read, "Every person who enters is a story waiting to be heard." Jean wanted Bruno to be the honorary guest at the opening night. Bruno hesitated. He never liked the spotlight, but something inside him stirred. He accepted. On opening night, Bruno arrived quietly, as always, but he felt the shift the moment he walked in. The stairs were different. People of all kinds, young and old, professionals, students. They were there for something beyond food. They were there for what he stood for. At the end of the evening, Jean asked for silence. He called Bruno to the front. "Tonight, we toast to change, to quiet courage, to the man who, without trying, taught us all what it means to truly see each other." Applause filled the room. Bruno smiled shyly. "I was just human," he said, "and sometimes that's enough." As he was leaving, he noticed a table in the corner. An older man, wearing a cap, simple clothes, reading a book, alone. Bruno walked over. "Mind if I sit here?" The man looked up, surprised, then smiled. "I thought no one would notice me." Bruno pulled out a chair. "Here." "No, one goes unnoticed anymore." And there, between bites and words, another story began, because the table that welcomes never grows cold, and real change starts with a single act of kindness.